Good morning and welcome to the introduction to cybersecurity webinar brought to you by Dishi Legal. My name is Wang, a senior legal consultant at Dishi Legal, and will be your host for this 4-part seminar series. Today we'll be discussing the concepts behind cybersecurity. Dishi Legal is a digital law regulation technology company. The International Cybersecurity Month started in October 2004. The Cybersecurity Awareness Month was established to raise awareness about the issues pertaining to online security. The Cybersecurity Month is of particular importance to Dishi Legal due to the fact that a majority of our clients deal with cyber-related issues on a daily basis, and as Dishi Legal, we took it upon ourselves to provide further insight from a legal perspective on how our clients can safeguard themselves. To date, South Africa has lost 2.2 billion rand due to cyber attacks and suffered 577 malware attacks per hour, an increase of 22% from 2019. Today, we are joined by advocate Zanyiwe Asare, founding partner of Dishi Legal, Doreen Mokoena, CEO of Cyber Sector NEEP, Gavin McLachlan, Senior Director, Granules Incorporated, and Athan Malambo, founder of Mokoena.
Thank you so much for that, Debbie. As the founding partner of Digital Legal, I thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we're really excited to get into the meat of the topic. And what I'll do is I'll allow my colleagues, I think starting from Gavin and then Athan, just to introduce themselves briefly so we know what and who we're dealing with today. So Gavin, please take the floor.
Okay, good morning. I have a mix of birds. I've been in property law for a very long time. I'm especially aware of the need for information and cybersecurity. As an attorney, we hold so much information about people on the net. Until now, it's been very casual. But that's okay. I'm keeping myself short.
Thank you for that, Gavin. Athan, I think maybe you can just give us a high level of who you are and how you connect to the space. Athan, could you please come to the floor and just tell the people who you are and how you connect to cybersecurity in the space?
Okay. Hi all. Just a quick historic on me. My name is Athan Malambo, as you all know. I've been in the tech industry for the last 20 years, specifically in web-based technologies. And from my side, police hosting of email infrastructures and data. So relating to cybersecurity, I think that is something which has been a growing concern, more and more so over the last couple of years. And I think we're going to see, but basically that's a little bit of background. I do a lot relating to investigation, relating to email penetration, data security, and so forth.
Thank you so much for that, Athan. Thank you so much for that, Athan. Okay, so I think just to jump right into it, as a firm, what we've seen is an influx of one concern, but also issues arising from the man on the street, the everyday person, where before, traditionally, when we spoke about cybersecurity would be for conglomerates, for multinationals, for companies with big budgets. And what we've seen with, especially over the past 6 months, with the influx of e-commerce or just online activity by everyone, even from a South African perspective, we've realized that people are literally interacting and living a digital life where everything has pivoted from analog to digital. And I think maybe the discussion that we need to have today is, in a practical sense, what does cybersecurity mean for the everyday person? Maybe Gavin, you could just take that for us to just explain to us, what does cybersecurity mean for the everyday person? What does it mean?
Perhaps you from the day-to-day attorney perspective.
I think
For attorneys, remember that for us, we have a unique selling proposition. Trust me. And if I let your data leak or whatever, you cannot trust me, I'll lose my business. It applies to all other spheres, and particularly to attorneys. And a lot of it is education. I've spent quite a lot of time trying to educate my various colleagues and about the common sense principles. Well, cybersecurity starts with common sense. It's not magical. I mean, as Athan said, there's certain things like DNS, etc. The technical parts. But it's generally for me helping attorneys, and in our case, I look at those firms, 76 or 77% of all the attorneys in this country are firms of one or two practitioners without any assistance on cybersecurity. And that's really what I think applies to all of us. You were talking about bigger organizations. I've worked with bigger organizations, but it's really each one of us at home and our staff that we have to focus on.
I agree with
Okay.
you. I agree with that. Maybe we can just get Athan's input on that. Athan, when you think about what the everyday man experiences from a cybersecurity perspective, or rather a cyber threat perspective, what's your take on that?
Okay, my take related to that and where we are with that, I think makes is always pertinent, so that people get a bigger picture of things. Is that we are literally looking at things in their infancy form, and as technology changes, the adaptability to that technology, especially with some, what I mean? I'm not in the deal. So those of us that have migrated to technology, this is quite a steep learning curve, and an extensive learning curve. So when it comes to things like cybersecurity, you know what? Literally at its infancy, and literally to mitigate this technology is also an evolving technical element. So we literally have to, the solution is evolving because the problem is evolving, and as technology grows, and the problem is that technology today is redundant tomorrow. So it's a matter of constantly evolving. So what is applicable today? You know what I mean? If it's a firewall, or if it's some kind of antivirus or anti-spam, literally, if it's applicable today, within 24 hours, it's completely not applicable anymore. And you have an entire system and mind state that is struggling to catch up. So it's literally, it's how can I say, it's not only just an immersive experience, but I think how the whole construct of security is looked, I think is pertinent. If you're just looking at trying to solve something, always understand related to security that it's a solution for that moment.
I think both of you hit the nail on the head, especially from our perspective. I mean, Debbie and I can agree that we actually had a similar conversation. And I think just to bootstrap off of the stat that Gavin gave us, that 76% of legal practitioners did not factor in cybersecurity, and to say what you to bootstrap on what you said, piggyback at least, and let me say that on what you said, Athan, to describe cybersecurity at infancy stage, I think is quite apt. So maybe the question that I can pose then is, what are we securing ourselves from? What does a threat look like? I think sometimes people have this very abstract idea of what a cyber risk is, and then, in order for them to be at risk, there needs to be this hacker that's downstairs with a balaclava on, and he's in this dark room and he's using all this sci-fi type technology. But I know that, amongst ourselves as practitioners, especially people who are directly in the ICT sector, we know that that's not what it looks like. So perhaps maybe if you can tell us, Athan, just from your perspective, what does a cybersecurity threat look like? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, I think that it relates to cybersecurity or any kind of security for that matter. I think Gavin hit the nail on the head when Gavin actually said that, you know what, this is a matter of common sense, you know, and the practice of common sense, you know. And it's literally a human element, you know, conscious, you know, when you are working, responding to your emails, you know, common sense has to be at the forefront, you know, because I think to a large extent, look, one of the biggest elements of cybersecurity, you know, you'll notice that the majority of more than 90% of all cybersecurity threats now have a social engineering component to them.
Yeah.
You know, so that social engineering component relates directly to the human response to that technology. So the idea is for example, if I'm going to penetrate your computer network, you know, for whatever particular reason, I'm going to do it at a time when you are emotionally vulnerable. You know, maybe you've got anxiety about a payment going to a legal company or this or that, or around the end of the month when your anxiety is high, and I know your attention to detail is not going to be where it should be. You know what I mean? You're not going to be as assertive. You know, so these are the kinds of things that I would actually take into consideration, you know, from a social perspective. You know, so it's a combination of actually being able to manipulate from a social, you know, technology combined with in order to how can I say, take advantage.
And then we seem to be losing you there. The sound, I'm not sure if you can hear us. Are we audible on your end?
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, I think perhaps, you know what, let's just pause there. Let's just I think great content. Let's just pause there. I'd like to introduce this beautiful young lady on my left hand, on my side. Doreen Mokoena. She is an amazing human being, but outside of that, the brains are really something to just put on the spotlight. I think what I'll do is I'll just give Doreen the platform to just introduce herself, and yeah, Doreen.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi everyone, my name is Doreen Mokoena. I am the CEO of CyberSec as a startup firm that specializes in cybersecurity, digital forensics, and web development. I have a very huge interest on cybersecurity, policy and regulations, and I think I've been placed in a very fortunate position to handle cybersecurity matters in this country. So it's such a great honor to be invited here, and I look forward to engaging with everyone.
Thank you. They say, show me your network, and I'll show you your network.
Exactly.
So I am very blessed to be surrounded by these lovely ladies and the two gentlemen on the screens. So let's get right back into it. So I think let's. Athan, you mentioned social engineering, and I think, you know, that's a term that we throw around, and that's great. But maybe, Gav, you can just maybe explain to us, what is social engineering? I mean, I can give some brief examples, but I think I'll allow you as the man of the law to just break it down for us. What would social engineering look like for the everyday person?
Are you going to direct the question directly to me? Sorry, the sound's not that great.
Yeah, it comes and goes.
Yeah, it comes and goes. Relating to social engineering, what does it look like? If that's what I believe that you are. As I said earlier on, you know what? It's a matter of using human elements in order to manipulate and cause a vulnerability, or to exacerbate a vulnerability on the clients behind. So the idea basically is that, you know what? As I said, you know what, the example that I gave, one of those mechanisms was, for example, some kind of malware. You know, I'm going to wait for a specific time, you know. This is the non-technical part. I'm going to wait for a specific time where I know that, you know what, there are transactions that I'm aware of. We're going to be taking good attorney or your lawyers or your real estate or a bank transaction, you know. And those time periods are usually around month end, you know, where people have a lot of anxiety to get things done and rush, and they don't necessarily pay attention to detail. So those are the kinds of instances where I would say that, you know what, we're social have to play. You know? So they look at these mechanisms related to human behavior and combine that with technology, you know, the technology inclusion in order to actually, how can I say, get to the goal. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Sorry, we're having some sound issues there. But if I'm to summarize what you said, it's really about the psychology behind someone who would want to create this kind of breach. The psychology behind the person who's interacting with this cyber actor, cyber criminal actor, and I guess the data subject or the consumer on the other end. I think just to get into the more technical side of the conversation, maybe Doreen can explain what the malware element is, what that would look like, what this actor would be doing to create that breach. Doreen?
So basically, what happens is I like explaining this from a end user perspective using layman terms. So we've got two actors. We've got the red team and the blue team. So basically what they do when they intrude into a company, they use what Gavin has actually explained, social engineering. But this time they use what we call direct entry. So they can do things like USB dropping, eavesdropping, and stuff like that. They will leave a USB in the reception area. That USB is embedded with a whole lot of malware that will take down the entire network.
Let me stop you there. I think sometimes we understand in South Africa the business scene is quite mixed. So you'll find SMME or medium-sized enterprise run by someone who might not be that tech savvy. So what does malware mean? I mean, if I picked up a USB and I put it in and you tell me malware, what is malware?
Malware is actually a type of virus that you don't want to find yourself associated with, because it's one that brings down your entire network. You know, it causes things like denial of services.
What does that mean?
So what it means is that once it has found its way into your network, you won't be able to communicate. There's going to be an intrusion of your network. You're not going to be able to send out emails. You're literally locked out of your own house. Up until that money has been paid, whether it's a form of bitcoins or anything or cryptocurrency, that is the only time it will be removed and you'll be able to transact or to run your day-to-day operations. It's one of the three viruses that we have, but it's the main institutional viruses because it does have denial of services, and that is one of the viruses that you don't want to find yourself messing with. Hence, it's crucial for us that when we do cybersecurity assessment, we remove the human element of it because that is one of the actors that bring malware into a network.
And I think what Doreen is saying is quite important. Gavin, I'm sure you would agree with me. So Gavin is an attorney, I'm an advocate, and we both work, I guess, in the law. And from a professional perspective, we deal with, policy implementation. Yep. So policy that speaks not just to, I guess, what she's saying in terms of, take out the human element, but then codifying what taking out the human element means, meaning that you create an organizational culture. But this isn't just for the workplace, if you think about it. This is for your home. This is because that could happen at home. Yep. We've got sensitive information that we deal with every day that gives people exposure, or that rather exposes our families, ourselves, our finances, and you find yourself in a situation where you can't explain why you're in debt because of card fraud. Yeah. That's personal information that connects you directly to you and creates a vulnerability and risk in your own life. Mm-hmm. So maybe, Gavin, from that perspective, when it comes to removing the human element, what do you guys do, or how do you view a cybersecure world maneuvering that place from a policy implementation and a training and organizational culture perspective?
I can certainly give some commentary there. It's like what we call business email interruption is a major threat to many businesses. And I work with the Fidelity Fund, Lloyd's Fidelity Fund to an extent, and our insurance fund. And last year, they had claimed around 200 million rand for money that was diverted in conveyancing transactions. So that's a major topic. And it doesn't, it's exactly as Athan said, it's social engineering. They worry you, they find out about it. And the people who do it will pay people within banks, pay people within estate agents to find out about transactions. And then suddenly emails arrive, there's one digit wrong, like XYZ1.
Gavin, I don't know if you can hear us. We're having some audio problems with you. Could you just repeat what you said? Gavin, can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly, Gavin.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's business email interruption, and it's all about the human element in your own firm. We are extremely careful. All my staff, we review it regularly. They also know that if somebody starts to phone and ask for my particulars, there's something odd. We get people trying to find out who I am. That's spearfishing. Trying to get to the person who authorized it. Yesterday, for argument's sake, I authorized about 15 million rand worth of payments. And I have to be very careful. But the big problem is the wetware people. If you don't educate your constant information about new tricks or ways things are done, all the sophisticated technology in the world won't help you.
Sure. I think you're spot on there, Gavin. So what we do as digitally legal, we come from the policy implementation perspective, regulation, legislation, and I think what I'd like us to maybe delve into now is the protection of personal information. So as you would know, our topic here is breach the breach, but we do have an element from cybersecurity, an element of data processing. So in South Africa, we've got the Protection of Personal Information Act, which is POPI. POPI speaks about not just information in a digital format, personal identifiable information, but it also speaks about the printed out things that are in files, things that you find on desks. And I think there's a big disconnect between that physical information, what people will have, so that's a printed ID, someone's address, maybe a check for a particular company. I don't think people use checks anymore, but sometimes they ask for those things to ensure that you're a legitimate company. And then an employee leaves it on a desk. And then that information is then used for illicit activities online. So there's no actual divide between the physical world and the digital world, but people walk life through that. So how do you sensitize people to make them understand that it's not just about you being on the computer? You could actually not touch a computer your whole life. But as long as someone has personal identifiable information belonging to you, they could go and ruin your life on an online platform. How do you sensitize people around that sort of thing, Gavin? And then you go ahead.
Sorry, Gavin. Sorry, Gavin, you want to go first?
No, you carry on.
What we're dealing with here is literally a complex becoming problem. Because it's not that simple or easy to change behavior with inside of people. It's something, the whole concept of cybersecurity in its infancy. And the same also with the new threats, and we will be facing and seeing different penetrations and new kinds of infections. New methods of mitigation. So it's kind of once again coming back to what Gavin said. It is a complement. It is a complementing both sides. You know what I mean? The technological side and the human side.
Athan, you sound like a robot. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a bit of a human break And maybe what we'll do is we'll just give Doreen. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll give Doreen an opportunity just to tell us, what is setting us back. So we hear, we're in the infancy stage. So we're, in the beginning. So what is setting us back? What do we need to do to become this data secure or cyber secure country? What do we do? Where does it start? Are we doing enough from a school level? Are we doing enough from a home level? Are we doing enough from a government perspective? Are we doing enough from a private sector perspective? Is there synergy in terms of a combined goal? Do we have a united goal? What does that look like?
Okay. Wow. So basically, I'm just trying to find the best way to break this down, because I'll be looking at this from an internet governance perspective, and I'll be looking at this from an IT perspective. Number one, if you run a company, your IT shouldn't be there just to fix computers. Your IT needs to develop what we call an information security policy. That is the policy that governs every IT-related matters within the functions. First of all, the IT policy needs to have what we call an acceptable use policy that governs how email communication should run, what you should click on, phishing and stuff like that. We need to have what we call a remote access policy, seeing that a whole lot of people are now working from home due to the pandemic. Then how do we govern from home office? People need to sign those policies. We need to have, there's a whole lot of policies. We need to have clean desk policy. It's not just for hygiene purposes, it's for making sure that you do not leak sensitive information. For instance, passwords. If we have a clean desk policy, we are then trying to arrive and get to a clean internet infrastructure within the company. Number two, internet governance processes actually include, they have a whole lot of multi-stakeholder approaches. We've got government, we've got civil society, we've got the academia, we've got technical, and we've got the academic side of it. So now what we're trying to do is to find synergy with all these actors. Because if I'm from a government perspective, of course I'll have all these response group, just like the DTPS, they have that as well. From a private sector point of sight, what we're trying to do is to actually embed the POPI Act and GDPR into all of these synergies and try to make things right. Because we all don't have the same roles, but we actually do have the same roles. So we are like a twin-tined coin in the same degree. So from a government perspective, I would like the government to lead by example. You understand? We have issues. Look at the the current hack that is happening with this company that processes loans and stuff like that. Experience got off scot-free. They had time to actually tell people, tell consumers, tell data subjects that, look, we've been hacked, this is what happened to us, but they waited up until 3 to 4 weeks. And right now that information is sitting right somewhere at the dark web, and we are literally in the danger of being hacked, of being phished, of our information being sold. So what is it that the information regulator was supposed to do better? How do we then enforce data protection laws, and how do we enforce accountability? Because it's good to have all of these nice fancy policies, but then how do we actually make sure that they do get adopted? So this is a subject and this is a topic that we need to look at, because we can talk all we like about malware and processing of information, but then the question is, how do we make sure that people are held accountable of such things?
Absolutely. I mean, Gavin, you would know this. One of the core principles, or one of the 8 elements of legal processing, as per Section 1 of POPI, the Protection of Personal Information, is a personal act rather, is accountability. And accountability isn't just saying, oh, I've got your data and this is what's happening, but it really speaks about the technical and the organizational components of safeguarding information. And I think what you said is pertinent. One, from an organizational perspective, we talk about the cyber hygiene, or data hygiene, ensuring that it's not just physically clean on your desk, but the way you're conducting your business is clean, it's transparent, and you can see what is happening when and where. Meaning that when you're interacting with a data subject, you can tell them, because this is what POPI is actually saying. It says, as a data subject, if I go to you, you need to tell me about my information via request. You need to explain to me who you're using it with, to how you got it, if I'm not sure,
And how is it
stored,
Yeah.
how is it safeguarded.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the question is that if we refine that with the experience, did you see what I did there? So with the experience, really the question is, even for information regulator, I don't want to overburden the information regulator, but it's a question that needs to be asked. How do we do audits? How does private sector, people like ourselves, how do we go in to assist the information regulator for them to give us the mandate to say, let's go into a place like Experian, because we know that they're data-intensive organization. How do we make sure that, one, this information was retrieved in a manner that is within the law, in the bound of the law? Number two, how do we ensure that the 8 principles are actually being applied? So what safeguards are you doing? Are you keeping this information up to date? Does data subject actually want you to keep this information? Are you interacting with them? Are you giving them the opportunity to delete it? Are you making yourself accessible? Because I'm sure most of you have seen, if you get an email with spam or trying to advertise something, and then it will say at the bottom, if you don't want to get information on this type of ad, unsubscribe. You click on it, and guess what? The link doesn't fall. You don't even get email. You don't. There's no place. It doesn't take you anywhere. It's a link that doesn't even.
And actually, sometimes you get an email back that says, "Thank you, hi Zanyiwe, you have been successfully unsubscribed, but you guys are still responding to me."
So and continuing that communication.
So how do we bridge? How do we actually get to that bridge where we say consumers have the right to be forgotten online?
Absolutely. Athan, Gavin, any takers?
Sorry, the sound is not good. I can't hear.
Oh no. I was saying, would you like to maybe just jump onto the conversation we just had now about what do we do? How do we create a culture of accountability?
There's the ethics of information. I mean, I do it for Varsity College. Just to make it information, you have to have ethics, not information. It's an ongoing process, and ethics, you must deal with it ethically. And the respect for information, respect for people, it starts with the whole thing. All our acts are based on consumer protection in the end. But you have to understand this information. And it's very important for attorneys, obviously, accountants, doctors. Doctors are, I won't comment too much. Doctors are shocking.
Okay, I think we're having some audio problems there. Gavin, I don't know if you can hear us. I think we're having some audio problems. But just to summarize, I think from what we heard from Gavin's end, it's really about the human rights aspect of data processing, that you're interacting with something that directly impacts citizens, directly impacts human beings, as opposed to looking at a person as just another number that's you're assigned to a passport number or an ID number or a work employment number. You're actually a human being. You're not just a barcode. And I think sometimes when I speak to clients and they don't really understand, because we do some training and awareness on the topic, they don't understand why we're saying this. And there was something brilliant that I watched years ago before I even finished school. It wasn't brilliant and in a positive manner, but it was just the way it was crafted. There was a gentleman. He lost everything. There was a letter or a decree saying that he's certified dead. His house his estate was being dissolved because, he was not alive. And everything was frozen, and they were waiting for a family member to come, and that family member came, and they took all his money, and this man was walking, he was alive. And that was purely based on a data breach. This happened because either he left his stuff recklessly, or he didn't, or someone used it. But the question is, the people that are processing all of this information, what safeguards they do to ensure that that the information is authentic, because it's directly impacting somebody? What do they do to like we said, to say, okay, this came from the correct source. We're processing it correctly. These are the technical elements that we have. Also from an organizational perspective, here's a separate layer, and then ensuring that from I guess the initiation and the entire value chain to getting to a conclusion, everything is above board. And there are people like Doreen, there are people like myself, Gavin and Athan. We sit around and we want to have these conversations, but our solutions won't scale if people don't understand that cybersecurity affects every single human being that is alive. Whether you are born or you are close to not being born, it affects you. And I think, I just want to wrap up and maybe we can get into the Q&A session. I think it's important for us to realize that it's not about, you don't need to be the president and you don't need some super high-tech person. It's an everyday situation. We give out personal information every day. You get into a building, you give them your license, they can tell who you are. The Protection of Personal Information Act, POPI, even says that your number plate is personally identifiable information because it's a sign and symbol that can track you back to a particular individual. It gives your house address. There's so much information that is embedded in what we deal with every day. And people are just not aware. Your cell phone. Actually, I'll let Doreen go into this one. Please explain to us what this thing does to us as people.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. If it was really up to me, I wouldn't use cell phones. I would actually use a small one. But
Just doesn't have too much tech on it.
The thing is, once you have a digital footprint and you have a cell phone on you, there's an 8 to 9 chance out of 10 that you're actually giving your information scot-free. Because right now, I feel like we need to start teaching, having the conversation of a VPN, what it is and what
is it? So VPN is a virtual private network. What does that mean?
Wow, this is actually a topic for another day. But what I'm saying is just your IP address, your cell phone IP address and your network IP address can give you away. It's the same thing that happens with your license registration. You go to the NATIs, you don't even need to be a traffic cop to know who a person is and if they own the car or if it's financed or not. It's a system that is available for anyone to go in and enter and actually penetrate and look for our information. Your cell phone, you need to safeguard your cell phone. You need to safeguard your WhatsApp. Make sure that you do not have any logged-in sessions running that you don't know about. Because we do have sessions running in the background. People are actually intercepting your information and you don't even know what's happening. We need to be careful of this tiny little app that we all love called Truecaller. We need to be careful of that. I mean, nothing is free. If it's free, it's too expensive and it's costing you a lot.
Can you actually elaborate on why? Really interesting with Truecaller, why we need to be careful. I mean, 90% of the society actually has downloaded Truecaller.
They have, because like I said, that nothing that is free and offers you such great and features comes very free. It's like TikTok. It's all of these applications. They have embedments of data breaches. You understand? Because, for instance, your number gets hacked, right? It gets intercepted into another person, and Truecaller has you by that name. And right now, those people who have hacked your number, they start making calls. They pick up as daddy, and you don't even have a clue that your number has been hacked. So how do we then bridge? It's such a great thing to have because we all want to know who's calling us. But in the meantime, we need to dig deep and see. We need to read.
Ask the why.
Ask the why.
How.
Why?
How.
And how.
How is it working?
And how is it working? Because I'm telling you, if you go to numbers, you just go to numbers and context, it shows you other people's numbers, people that you have no idea that they exist. And people can actually go to Truecaller and search for you just by your name and surname. So it's our modern day yellow pages.
Oh.
But you're giving
your information away by signing in.
And I think I don't want to use the term "you're not aware" because the terms and conditions do say it, but we've just become so accustomed to not
reading the fine print.
True. Wow. I think every time I interact with it, I mean, and it speaks to, for instance, just the search engines.
Yeah.
The type of information, the digital footprint, the trail that we're leaving. And, you know, just to bring it back, I think this really speaks to a problem of education, lack of literacy, lack of education. And I mean, from a digital legal perspective, so we have put a program together called Cyber Citizen. And Cyber Citizen does this. You know, sometimes because we're in the industry, we speak about this every day. We think, okay, everybody knows. And then client comes to you and you hear what client's issue is. And you're just sort of dumbfounded. But I don't know, maybe just to close that session, Gavin, would you like to just add in there for us?
Sorry, I'm just getting some of the messages.
No, that's fine.
You want me?
Yeah, I was saying, you know, when what is maybe the most shocking thing we've heard from a data breach perspective from a client where you would have thought, I thought everybody knew this. What would the top two things you would say that you would never have thought a person would not know this?
Well, the fact that dumpster diving, they don't understand dumpster diving. They all throw, how many of you throw away your credit card slips or your cash slips really? Really does. Just put them, drop money out, put them in the bin at the ATM. Who's guilty of that? That's immediately giving information away.
Yeah.
If you fly on a plane, what do you do for a ticket when you finish?
Yeah.
You should a ticket. I don't have paper tickets, mine are all virtual, and then shredded virtually after I finish with them. So, but essentially, and also what I do, like I did for our Chamber of Commerce, I said that I would go into your organization and I will get a file. Oh, tell me which nation of X-Men. And it was simple. It was people. I managed to pay people. I went in, wore a white jacket with a little badge on. Good morning. I'm here to fix your printers. Straight in. And by the way, I just need your username and password to check a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awareness. It really boils down to awareness. When you're a digital alien, a digital immigrant, or a digital native, you need to be aware.
True.
That's the big issue.
Athan, do you want to add anything? So we deal with these things every day, but it's hearing it all the time. It's still it's shocking, and maybe it's because we're wired to suss out the risk first. We go into a place and you look at the vulnerabilities, you look at the culture, and because maybe we've been doing this over a couple of years, that's how we think. But I think every time I get the same type of problem over and over again. Oh, I send this particular. I mean, we can go into something as simple as sexting, which it's a weird one. Like, I have some more questions with Debbie, and then we'll see if we can slay them on our behalf, because this is a team effort after all. So Debs, I think you can just go ahead with the Q&A.
Perfect. Is there an anti-software for our cell phones that we can use and install?
They are, but right now I'm gonna drop names and I hope we get royalties because we are, we're selling software now. I use Trend Micro. I love Trend Micro. I think you pay about 700 rand per license, and it safeguards 5 of your devices. And what's nice about Trend Micro, it's one of my clients. It came to me and said, "Look, I love this." I found out my wife was trying to get hold of my cell phone. So what it does is it takes a picture of a person trying to get into your cell phone, and it sends it to you.
It's always the wives.
Yeah. So I love Trend Micro. It reports on activities. It flags, if you get a phishing email, it flags it up. Look, there's an email that came from this source. Please don't open it. It's a phishing attempt or whatever. It's one of the greatest softwares that I've ever used in my lifetime of being into cybersecurity and the technical infrastructure. Trend Micro is the best. I don't know, I stand to be corrected, but I prefer it. I recommend it to my clients. And disclaimer, I don't get 0 cents from Trend Micro. I'm just a loyal customer.
And is it downloadable on Android and iStore?
It is. So what you do is you go buy the license itself. then you download the application on Play Store. Then you run. So what I like about it is one license can actually protect everybody in your household. You know, so yeah, that's how it works.
That's insightful.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
That
So, how will I know if my information has been breached or sold?
I like this.
I think let me intro you. When you get those phone calls from people and you know that you've never given your number away, that in itself is a breach.
Yeah.
That in itself is a sale of your personal information. And I think the problem that happens in that is that people don't define that intrusive phone call from somebody or a company that you've never consented to communicating with you as a breach. People want to make it so abstract and so grand. But that in itself, someone having information that they can contact me on is incorrect. It's illegal, actually. So that in itself is a breach. But I think maybe she'll get into the more technical, just how do you see, so for instance, maybe let me elaborate on your question. How do you see that your information has been breached from a technical perspective?
So there's a gentleman that I work with who's actually from overseas. His name is Troy Hunt. Troy Hunt is the gentleman who actually brought the Dean's office, one of South Africa's biggest data breaches. I think about like 25 million data records. So if you own a house, trust me, your name is actually on that list. So he runs an organization called Have I Been Pawned. So you go on your browser, www.haveibeenpawned.com, and it will give you a space where you literally put on your email address. So what you can do is put on all your email address and click search. Every site or every hacker that has your information, it will pop up. And it will tell you exactly from which site. For instance, 2 years ago, LinkedIn got hacked, right? And everyone's email address were actually compromised. So if you go to Have I Been Pawned, not pawned, pound, you will see that information. So you will see that, look, this email address that I have for my Facebook is actually on Have I Been Pawned from Badu, from FNP, from wherever. So it tells you from the originator and where it's actually being kept. But I'm not too certain if that is still in existence yet, but it does show you. And if it's clean, then you have a very nice clean interface telling you that, look, you're safe. But that barely happens.
Yeah.
And another thing that I wanted to touch base on is the fact that as consumers, well, I'm saying this from a consumer perspective, we apply for a loan, and there's one little box that we don't take note of. Do you consent for marketing purposes?
Oh, yes.
You actually, like, yeah, I do consent, because what? Hey, I cannot wait for my loan. Just hurry up and process this thing. They take that information and they sell it to the third parties. Because it asks you, do you consent? One, it doesn't say, this is how we're going to sell your information. This is the extent of how your information is going to be sold. And you need to have some responsibility. Never consent to that, because it doesn't say this is how we're planning on selling your information. For the mere fact that you have consented, you have given them the right to sell your information.
Which I think that's what copy is also trying to do. It's trying to say, be more transparent, be open. What are you doing with this information? What are you consenting to? But yeah, I think we are slightly running out of time.
So the last question is, how can I rate my history of all traps with internet or search engines?
This is really funny.
Not possible.
This is really funny, and this is a good question. I like it. You know what? I always say, once you have a digital footprint, you're online. Even if you can just hire the most search engine optimization company ever to try and delete your information, we can always come it back. The internet doesn't forget. It just doesn't forget. But there are things that you can do, just to keep track. You can embed intellectual property code on your pictures. So once you enter the code, it runs through, it searches the internet and shows you where your picture has been loaded and stuff like that. And another thing, wow, this is too heavy and too lengthy. But what I'm going to say is, when you go online, just be responsible. Practice digital literacy, because there's this joke that says when you apply at Google, you don't even need to introduce yourself. They know who you are.
Yes.
So it's the internet. They know who you are as well. So just tread carefully.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Doreen, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Gavin and Athan, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I want to thank you both for being part of this. I think this is a great session, very short. I think there's just so much to unpack, and we'll definitely have more sessions to come. I think from the legal perspective, Gavin, even just that 76% of legal practitioners not having the cybersecurity element embedded in their offerings, for me, that gives me the heebie-jeebies, if you may. But it just tells us that there's so much work that needs to be done. And I'm just so grateful that, I've met like-minded people that see that and are doing something about it. So for that, I salute you. And Athan, from a technical perspective, you're doing amazing work yourself. And I cannot wait for us to, as Doreen had put, bring the different elements of ICT, the ICT world, different practitioners in different fields, but we all intersect through this digital field. So we can come together and have a very strong combined solution. So for that, I thank you. And for Debbie Wang, our superstar senior consultant here at Digitally Legal, thank you so much for today. You did a great job, stellar job.
Thank you very much.
And for everyone watching us today, thank you so much for giving us your time, lending an ear, and we're so excited to have, I guess, cyber citizens, people that are cyber literate, cyber aware, people that understand the risks, and people that are ensuring that they're creating a world full of change, a world that is accountable, not just for themselves, but for private sector and government, but I guess in their homes as well, because it all starts here. It starts within your surroundings. So thank you for joining Digitally Legal on Breach the Breach. I hope that you'll join us on the 15th of this month, which is next week, Thursday, for children and schools, cybersecurity information awareness. We'll have some pretty great speakers, as you can see. We bring the heat. But thank you so much for joining us, and I thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Sure.
Christian, did you take a screen grab of the...
Should we take a photo, guys?
A bit.
In the live video. Bye.
A bit.